Stick with your boys at Locked On Grizzlies, and most importantly, stick with Damichael Cole. He told you, if you listen to this show, if you watched it, however you take it in, podcast, YouTube, he said it. I heard it. I was right there. Don't be surprised if something happens with Desmond Bane. It might be. He said it. It happened. He knows what's going on with the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm happy to be along for the ride. This is Locked On Grizzlies. It's Christmas time. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are free and available wherever you can get your podcasts. We also are streaming and showing on YouTube. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all the different things that you can continue to do to help us grow Locked On Grizzlies. It all is appreciated. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my wonderful co-host on the road in Phoenix, getting ready for the Phoenix Suns game tonight. Oh, and by the way, Damichael Damas, Nostra Damichael, whichever one maybe is best fitting for you, Damichael Cole. Happy Desmond Bane Day to you. He's questionable on the injury report, but as we talked about multiple times, that almost certainly means as long as something doesn't go horribly wrong, Desmond Bane's playing. So happy Desmond Bane to you, and congratulations on being a future-telling person.
You know what? I'll take the Nostradamus. You know, I've heard that one a couple times before, so you know it kind of rolls off the tongue pretty nicely there. But Joe, how you doing? I think it's a happy, as you said, Desmond Bane Day. You know, in Grizzlies Nation as well. But as I mentioned on our last episode, I kind of was a couple people just talking through a couple channels, and what I was pretty much told was by someone, close to Desmond Bane, that they were told that he's coming back on Friday. So, basically, just wanted to throw that in there yesterday without just basically saying, hey, Desmond Bane will be back.
Sure, yeah. Because then something outside of your control happens and everybody points at you and says you're a big idiot.
Yeah, and the thing is, the players, as we've seen a couple times, these players are really antsy when it comes to coming back. And sometimes the medical staff of the Grizzlies, they have a real cautious approach. So it was more like, hey, keep your eyes open. This thing's going to wrap up a little bit. Everyone's talking about Christmas Day. But basically what I was hearing is he'd be back sooner. But now we're here, Joe, right? We've talked about it. We literally spent a lot of time last episode talking about why this team misses Desmond Bane. And now we get to see what they've been missing. I think this is a big piece, Joe, and this is a big piece not only for the starting lineup, it's a big piece, just for the ricochet effect throughout the whole team. Now you have your bench, kind of in place. Well, so many pieces of this. Your three-point shooting is going to improve. Ja Morant, we've seen him turn into, like John Stockton or Steve Nash, passing the basketball right now. But you know what? He even told me himself, when Desmond Bane's on the floor, it opens up more scoring opportunities for himself as well. Just, the gravity, as they like to say, with those shooters. All of that comes into play as well with this guy, Desmond Bane.
Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you to BetOnline for being our title sponsor on this episode. I think that everything you just said is 100% correct, and I'm excited. Obviously, I'm a big Desmond Bane guy. So, I want Desmond Bane out there, not just because he makes the Memphis Grizzlies better, but I like watching him play basketball. But I can't help, Damichael, but wonder, there's a scene in The Longest Yard, the remake, with the character Brucey, when all the different players from the other side of the jail that are led by Michael Irvin, they come over and they join the team, and Brucey's crying and he goes, now I'll never get to play. Right. I think we're about to arrive at that moment with somebody currently in the Grizzlies rotation, right? There's going to be an odd man out because they're not going to go to 11-man rotation. Yeah, I go around the way a time or two. So Bruce, he's crying now. I'm never going to play. Is that going to be Santi Aldama? Is that going to be David Roddy? Is that going to be John Conchar? I think those are the three most likely candidates for being outside of the rotation. We could probably put Santi Aldama outside of that because they need another big. It can't just be Jaren and Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. They need a fourth guy that could eat some of those minutes. So it's probably not going to be Santi. And John Conchar, as limited as he may be in some ways, is an important player in terms of playing within the scheme of the Grizzlies. Taylor Jenkins trusts him. So that leaves the rookie, David Roddy, who clearly is in front of Jake LaRavia at this point in terms of playing time, rotation. Roddy is there in Phoenix with you, whereas wherever the Memphis Hustle are is where Jake LaRavia currently is. So I think Roddy is probably that odd man out going into this new 10-man rotation. And I say new because we haven't seen these guys play together. This is an exciting time because this is the first time we're seeing these dudes all on the floor at the same time. So if Ja, Bane, Brooks, Jackson Jr., and Adams are your starters, that means you've got Tyus. That means you've got Zaire, who isn't playing well right now, but they're working him back, and he raises your ceiling like we talked about yesterday. Brandon Clark's obviously going to play. So if it's a 10-man or if it's a 10-man rotation, that puts Conchar and Aldama as your 9th and 10th guys. David Roddy's the odd man out.
It's a good situation to be in. All right, this is the situation we talked about earlier in the season. Like, man, they're getting all these guys experience, and it's a good thing because, if the roster came in fully healthy, we don't see David Roddy that much potentially, or we don't see, Jake LaRavia, that much early in the season. And we don't see Santi Aldama get as many big minutes, as he has so far this season. So it's kind of, like a blessing in disguise sometimes when you get in those situations, you create depth. And that's what the Grizzlies are doing right now. 2 weeks ago, you may not have thought this team was as deep as last season's team. Now you can make an argument. When you throw that second unit out there, it's comparable in a way. I mentioned, I think it was 2 weeks ago when I wrote the story where the Grizzlies, the bench was 25th in net rating of the starting point guard in Tyus. And then you have Brandon Clark. So those two pieces. You have those two pieces kind of settled in. And then there's where, Santi Aldama, as well as you mentioned, I think he's the one who can pretty much pencil into that second unit as well. So now you have two spots. You have John Conchar. You have, Jake LaRavia. I think he could factor in some type of way when he's fully, back from his G League assignment and things like that. David Roddy as well. And then, of course, Zaire Williams. I think we're going to really see, we're going to get a taste of what Taylor Jenkins' mindset is right now. I think that's what we're about to find out, because if he goes with Zaire Williams, I think he's playing the long game, right? He's saying, hey, Zaire isn't where he will be eventually, but we know the potential. As you said, this is a guy who can help out with Tyus Jones and creating shots, running pick and roll and things like that. But if he goes, with a guy like David Roddy or John Conchar, in that fifth spot, it's basically like, hey, David Roddy's been playing really good basketball lately. Like you allude to removing him out of the lineup. I think if I'm not mistaken, he scored double figures in 3 consecutive games so far. He's been playing some really good basketball. It'd be tough taking a rookie. By the way, in Phoenix, he has a lot of family coming to that game as well. So, he's going to be amped up for that game as well. I think David Roddy would be a tough one to remove just from a production standpoint. John Conchar probably would be my bet at this point. But, I think David Roddy is another strong bet. If you asked me, a month ago, I would have said, the rookies, Roddy and LaRavia, will be put in better situations where they can watch. Kind of how, it worked out for Zaire Williams. He talked a lot about how when he got that time off in late November throughout December to really watch, the game slowed down for him. And that's when he came in January, February, and kind of took off during his rookie season.
A good problem to have because Desmond Bane is back, and that is a major positive for these Memphis Grizzlies. End of rotation questions aren't as pressing, especially as, Taylor Jenkins has shown a willingness to go 9-man rotations, right? So maybe he does that and even more guys are cut out of the process. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it. You're exactly right. And we'll get our first taste of that in this game against the Phoenix Suns. That's what we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the NHTSA. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think that law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. Your friends, your coworkers, even your parents can tell. Everyone can tell. So what makes you think that law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. This is paid for by the NHTSA. We'll talk about Grizzlies Suns and what Desmond Bane's return will do against Phoenix next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, you are there in Phoenix. I like the decor of your hotel room, by the way. It's sharp there. I like that there's a nice little painting over your shoulder. It's a sharp look. You're there. You'll be in person for Grizzlies Suns, and then obviously you'll make your way to San Francisco for the main event of the weekend. This is kind of the appetizer to the main course. But, you know, Phoenix is at this moment a better basketball team than the Golden State Warriors are. I think the Grizzlies might even be favored when the time comes for lines to be opened for Grizzlies Warriors because Steph Curry is out for Golden State. Phoenix, aside from Cam Johnson and Jay Crowder, which is a hilarious outcome of that entire situation, because I think it was either Cam Johnson or Jay Crowder in terms of playing time for the Suns, and now it's neither because Jay Crowder's not with the team and Cam Johnson's out due to injury. So obviously you don't want to laugh at people's injuries, but the misfortune of the Suns I am laughing at, if I'm being honest, because I'm a petty person. I think that when you look at this Grizzlies-Suns matchup, what is most fascinating to me, Damichael, beyond Bane being back, which is going to be so valuable for the Grizzlies, looking at this Phoenix team, it's exactly Devin Booker didn't play in the last game they had against the Washington Wizards, but I don't think it's necessarily a serious injury. It could be something that Booker, and I haven't seen the updated injury report, so maybe he's not even on it. But you know, Devin Booker playing obviously is vital. Chris Paul is not the offensive weapon he once was, but he's still an excellent facilitator of offense, a threat in the mid-range. DeAndre Ayton, you know, with all the drama that occurred over the summer with his contract signing and all those sorts of things being matched by the Suns, even though they weren't on the same page internally, they're still a really good basketball team, right? They're in the middle of the Western Conference right now, only a game or so behind the Grizzlies. And you're playing in Phoenix. And as we mentioned in yesterday's episode, it's not like the Grizzlies are road warriors right now. They're exact opposite of that. They're playing pretty poorly on the road. So I think a lot of the storylines going into this one, as good as Phoenix can play, obviously they were the overwhelming number one seed last year, a lot of it goes back to Memphis, how they integrate Bane and how they address some of these problems that they've had going into road games, because the Suns are better than the Thunder. And, you know, the Suns are comparable to what the Grizzlies saw in Denver with the Nuggets. This could be another game that could get out of hand in the wrong way, or in a wrong way for the Grizzlies if Memphis isn't prepared to play.
Yeah, it's an interesting game for sure. I think the first thing when you talk about the Suns is, will Devin Booker play in this game? Devin Booker has missed the past couple games, and quite frankly, he's in that conversation, you know, with Ja, Steph, Luka, De'Aaron Fox, possibly Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as being.
He's an all-star caliber guard.
Yeah, so far this season. I mean, I think he had a 58-point game, you know, last week. So he's, you know, playing really good basketball this season. You know, we love to watch those Dillon Brooks versus Devin Booker matchups. Personally, one of my favorites. You know, Devin Booker's going to do his share of talking, and Dillon Brooks, you know, he already talks. So if you talk back, you're feeding right into the game of Dillon Brooks. So that'll be fun to watch as well. I think that's where things start, because if you look at the Suns, excellent ball movement, right? They play that system. You know, I think Taylor Jenkins, you know, adopted a little bit of it, you know, from the time, you know, it comes from that Greg Popovich coach tree. A lot of those guys that come from the Greg Popovich coaching tree play that 0.5 style offense, you know. And when you think of the 0.5 style offense, you're talking about teams that are basically passing the ball like it's a hot potato. You don't want to hold on to the ball too long. You want to get guys involved really fast. And that's how the Suns play. That's why, you know, without Devin Booker, you're basically looking at a team who is not going to create a lot of their own shots. You got Mikal Bridges, Chris Paul, maybe in pick and roll, DeAndre Ayton, but a lot of guys are just going to get their shots through the flow of the offense. I think, from this Grizzlies team, their defensive versatility kind of caters better towards those matchups. For example, you're not just going to switch, any guy onto Nikola Jokic. It's a whole different ball game. Whereas with the Suns, DeAndre Ayton is very capable of exposing mismatches. But kind of in a similar way to Jaren Jackson Jr., I've heard some people over there in Phoenix kind of say, hey, he's not getting used as much, kind of how, people rumble about that in Memphis about Jaren Jackson Jr. not getting enough post touches and things like that. So basically, Joe, I think this is a good opportunity for the Grizzlies to get back, in their winning ways on the road. We mentioned they're 6-9 on the road. And Bane's coming back, how much that's going to mean. And I'm sure he's probably going to be on some type of, limitation here. But 20-25 minutes with Desmond Bane can be a big difference in a game like this.
Massively important. Yeah, and you're right. He's going to be on some sort of limitation. There's no way he plays the full allotment of minutes, knowing the way that the Grizzlies operate. 20 to 25 is likely. I am intrigued by what Phoenix does when they have to go to their bench because of all of those injury issues that you mentioned. Going into the game against the Wizards, Devin Booker with groin soreness. You obviously have campaign connection to Memphis there, out with foot issues. We mentioned Cam Johnson. So Phoenix has to rely on guys that maybe it wouldn't normally rely on. They obviously have Mikal Bridges, who's an extremely talented player, really strong wing, one of the best two-way wings in the entire NBA. But, Torrey Craig, Damian Lee is having a sneaky good season for the Suns, doing really well from three, the former member of the Golden State Warriors, if I recall correctly. He's doing some good things for Phoenix. But again, if Bane is out there in close to full strength with Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams, theoretically speaking, the starting five of Memphis is not just better than that the Suns are going to be trotting out there. Even if Devin Booker plays, they're better than almost any starting five in the NBA. And it's exciting to see it in a non-theoretical way, because how the rotation plays out, how they attack the Phoenix bench and try to take advantage. Because even if Booker plays, campaign is unlikely to play, and there's Cam Johnson's not going to play, coming back from a surgery. So for one of the first times this season, Memphis is going to be more healthy than their opponent. How they respond and handle that is going to be really fun to watch play out. It makes it more exciting, the unknown of the Grizzlies rotation, which is kind of crazy to say 2 days before Christmas.
One of the first games that the Grizzlies will be the healthier team. You said something there. You really said something there. We haven't seen that much. I think that's a big point, here. And the Grizzlies legitimately will have 11, 12 guys who have played, very impactful rotation minutes throughout the season, up to this point. And the Suns, you mentioned, is shorthanded. The bench doesn't have a primary point guard, I don't think, right now, as I think Dwayne Washington is the guy who played some of those minutes, and it looks like he's been injured as well. So they're very shorthanded, and Chris Paul ain't playing 40 minutes these days. So I think because of the injury situation, because of just the energy bolt, this is a winnable, very winnable game. The Nuggets game is going into that game, it was like, all right, you expect the Grizzlies to play better, but the Nuggets have been playing some really good basketball. The Suns game, I think it should be a little bit more optimistic going into this game. The Grizzlies have the numbers advantage, as you just mentioned, something we just haven't said much this season. I think there is something to, getting a player like Desmond Bane back. I mean, Phoenix does have, one of the top defenses in the game. And, we saw last season when the Grizzlies played Phoenix, they had some really good success. You'll remember towards the end of the season, right? All the starters sit out. You have DeAnthony Melton, I think, started at point guard that game, because even Tyus set that game out. John Conchar, I believe, was in the lineup. Maybe Zaire Williams, Kyle Anderson. And those guys beat the Suns, the number one seeded Suns last season. If you go back to December, you'll remember one of Ja Morant's first big baskets of the season when in the final seconds, I think Devin Booker makes a three-pointer on one end, and then Ja Morant gets the ball on the other end, goes between Devin Booker and Mikal Bridges on that signature play that the Grizzlies run for him in closing situations, gets the layup, and the Grizzlies get a win in Phoenix, by the way. So this is a game that I think, the Grizzlies have had some success lately, and I think, they're set up to have some good success in this game too. The injuries are tilted in their favor. Desmond Bane being back and just being whole. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Suns.
An injection of energy and positivity coming from Memphis when they desperately need it, which is a good thing to be able to say for this Grizzlies team. Thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's Take of the Day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is a wonderful resource for all of your betting info, stats, news, and analysis needs. BetOnline.net is where you can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball, everything in between. They've got it going on at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on BetOnline as well. They are the fastest and easiest way to get betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are going to take a moment to reflect here on this final weekday edition of Locked On Grizzlies before the Christmas holiday. Don't go anywhere. Damichael, I know you're on the road and you're probably going to take an opportunity to do a weekend episode of Locked On Grizzlies when you're able. Being away from your family during this time of year, I'm sure is tough. But again, it's for a good reason if you're an NBA beat writer. And it's for a good reason in terms of the NBA with the Grizzlies, because they are playing on Christmas Day for the first time. And we were talking about before we started recording this episode, you are from Memphis. You are a Memphian through and through, and you've seen that organization grow from the beginning. I have followed the Memphis Grizzlies for a decade now, going back to when I first moved to Memphis in 2011. I've been covering the team officially as a blogger and podcaster can for over 9 years. And I think that what we all need to, Desmond Bane being back is wonderful, and you got to beat the Phoenix Suns, and you want to win and keep your seeding. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the crazy statement that I'm about to make. The Memphis Grizzlies are playing in the prime time slot on the East Coast on Christmas night. 8 p.m. Eastern time. It is the Golden State Warriors, who before Steph Curry got hurt, the most popular team in the NBA right now. That's probably a true statement. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm willing to bet Golden State's up there, against the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant's Memphis Grizzlies. And I think that this is a moment to reflect on the greatness of Ja Morant, not just in terms of his on-the-court play, but the impact that he has made on the Grizzlies organization, the city of Memphis. They are playing on Christmas Day in large part because of Ja Morant.
Yeah, as the young people like to say, the Grizzlies are one of them ones. They are one of them ones right now. They are one of those teams when you think of, the best of the best, the tier one teams, the teams who people like to watch. The Grizzlies have become one of those teams. That's not always been the case, Joe. You mentioned, Christmas mornings. I can think of so many Christmas mornings. I'm, in Memphis at a family member's house, and we're all gathered in there, but we're watching, LeBron James and Miami Heat, or we're watching Kobe Bryant and the Lakers, or we're watching, all of these other players, but it was never, the Grizzlies on Christmas Day. And that Christmas Day, getting that Christmas Day game, it's tough. Like, Kevin Durant isn't playing on Christmas Day this season. Now, he did make a joke. I saw a presser he did earlier where he said that he's probably the reason the Nets aren't playing on Day right now, because, he requested that trade. But all in all, think about the players who aren't playing, on this day. There's some really good players out there who aren't playing on Christmas Day. The Grizzlies, Ja Morant in particular, is kind of, help ascend this team to a different level. It's kind of similar, I use the Milwaukee Bucks comparison a lot
Mhm.
because it's kind of what Giannis has done in Milwaukee, right? I remember growing up, no one really talked about Milwaukee.
Right.
It wasn't a team
Nobody's
that
hyping up Michael Redd's Milwaukee Bucks.
no one was hyping up Michael Redd's Milwaukee Bucks, and boom, you get Giannis in the middle of the first round, and now they're the talk of the East, for the most part, and that's what's happening in Memphis right now. The grit and grind era, as great as it was here locally, and the story and everything nationally, it was a respect thing with the Grizzlies, but it wasn't a like, oh, but we love watching them.
Yeah, it wasn't a style of play that people wanted to see. And you're exactly right, Damichael. In my research for this final segment, I pulled up the Grizzlies made the Western Conference Finals in 2013.
Right.
The starting lineup for the team the season after, because again, they were in the Western Conference Finals, and obviously they didn't play on Christmas Day. Starting five: Mike Conley, Tony Allen,
Yep.
Tayshaun Prince. Shout out to Grizzlies front office, Tayshaun
Yeah.
Prince. Zach Randolph, and Marcus Gasol, guys that logged minutes in that game. Mike Miller, Jared Bayless, Quincy Pondexter, Kosta Koufos, and Tennessee Dirk himself, John Lure. All right. So those were your 10-man rotation guys the season after the most successful season in Grizzlies history, and none of them were superstars. Again, that's the most successful team. You want to say last year's Grizzlies team was the best, 56 wins, just like a previous Grizzlies team? That's fine. I think there's room for debate there. I'm talking about the team that got the furthest, and they had no superstar. They were respected around the league, like you said, but they were not a team that you wanted to go out of your way and see. You take Ja Morant off of this Grizzlies team, that same exact thing can be said. A really good team, a playoff caliber team that without Ja, there is no star power. There is no, or very little star power, it factor. Ja Morant is the star that the Memphis Grizzlies kind of revolve around at this point. And whether it's the Nike deal, whether it's other advertisements, and just the fact that he chooses Memphis, Damichael, right? He signed a 5-year extension with no player option.
Player options.
No player option. If you could mold and create a Grizzlies superstar, it's Ja Morant. So I just wanted to take the moment. You mentioned how special grit and grind was, and it's very special to me. Like, grit and grind is why I still do this, after leaving the city in 2014. It's why I'm sitting here talking to you 8 years later. I am still invested because of how special that group was to me. And for Memphis to be able to have that lightning strike twice, and the strike to be bigger, it's bigger. Yeah. It legitimately is bigger because of the impact that this very Memphis superstar, unapologetically himself, is bringing eyes to the city and the franchise. I just think it's a beautiful thing. So I wanted to shout that out.
It's funny how these things happen too, because there was talk in the offseason like, oh, do we get a Christmas game between the Grizzlies and Warriors? And there were some people, oh, it's too soon, or some people were saying, oh, it may happen. And then you get the Ja Morant and Draymond Green, kind of little Twitter.
Yeah, that helped a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah. You'd like to think some of that, but it's Christmas games are a narrative thing, right? You look at all these teams playing against each other. It's usually, like you got the Celtics and Bucks. That's no accident. You don't just pick two good teams out of the east side of the hat and say, oh, Celtics and Bucks. No, this is the best of the best. These are narrative games as well, and the Grizzlies and Warriors have really become that. We're going to talk more about it later in the week, just how that is kind of developed here. But the fact that Steph Curry is out, for example, and this game is still going to be one of the most watched games on the night. You can pretty much bank on it because of Ja Morant being in this game, because of the Warriors' pedigree, and quite frankly, just because these two teams. I mean, a lot of people saw Dylan Brooks' comments. They saw him say he's got Clay and he wants to show Clay what he's got. Fans love that stuff. You want to see the follow-up behind that stuff. We wanted to see the follow-up, each game during that playoff series after something crazy was said. Something crazy was said just about every game from one of the sides. I had never heard broke the code in my life until that series. So a lot of things were said, and quite frankly, I think there's a healthy dislike, I think, in a way, when it comes to these two teams. It's not Pistons, Bulls in 88 or anything like that, but it's, we know this is a team that the Warriors are saying, hey, this team really thinks they're about to catch us. Dylan Brooks called us old. He says they know we're coming. We're not worried about these guys. We got 4 rings. I know that's what Draymond's probably thinking. And then you got the Grizzlies. Like, okay, we remember what happened last time we were in this building. So all of those come into play when you talk about narratives. And then the fact that it's the first time they play in this season sets it up perfectly for Christmas Day. It would be great, to be at Memphis, sit with some fam and sit back on the couch and watch it. But I tell you what, being there at Chase Center, it's going to be a real cool feeling. Can't wait to see, just get that Christmas effect. I know Taylor Jenkins' family is in town. Ja Morant, some of his family will be here as well. A couple other players have told me that their families are coming up. So it's not going to be, me and you, we like to talk about the human factor of this, right? You talk about, hey, they're in hotels, they're away from family. A lot of their families are coming up for this game. They're supposed to have like big dinners and things like that. So should be just a fun overall time on the TV screen and off of it.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy for you, my friend. It's a really cool opportunity. I know it's hard to be away from family, but at the same time, to cover a team that's playing on Christmas Day, sucks to work on Christmas, but at the same time, this is as good a time as any in the regular season in terms of creating content for one of the best teams in the NBA, and that is certainly the Memphis Grizzlies, who we have the good fortune to be able to cover and follow here on Locked On Grizzlies. Speaking of Locked On Grizzlies, thanks for making us your first listen today and every day. Now make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Pete Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I do believe the plan is for a special Christmas treat for our listeners and subscribers. Damichael Cole, again, on the road for his holiday weekend here. He's going to, when he finds some time, put together a little nugget of an episode for you. And you guys will be talking about what happened in Phoenix, I'm sure, and you'll be previewing the Warriors game more extensively than my narrative-loving self did, talking about Ja. Guilty as charged. I'm mad at you for it. I think that the cool thing that you're going to have a chance to talk to our listeners and viewers about, Damichael, is being there, right? That's so valuable that you and the Commercial Appeal are able to do that and have that experience, being there around the coaches and players, providing that insight. It's going to be a wonderful thing for folks to check out over the weekend. Yeah,
it's going to be fun. Been to the Chase Center a few times now, because of last season, the playoffs and all of that. And, I'm really looking forward to seeing what this Christmas Day atmosphere is going to be like. But you want to see how the Grizzlies respond to it as well. I think that's a big part of it. But, yeah, from a personal standpoint, yeah, this is going to be my first Christmas kind of away from the family. But, you kind of put things in perspective, as you said. A lot of people would love to cover a Christmas Day game. I think it's a cool opportunity. It's something you almost dream of, right? One day covering. If you're covering a Christmas Day game, that means you're covering either a really good team or a team that, blows the ratings out of the waters. And
historically significant team like the New York Knicks.
Exactly. And even those boys are playing good basketball right now. So
that's true.
So all things considered, yeah, it's a great opportunity. Looking forward to it. I want to just really hone in on that experience for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it and watching it. And Damichael and I will be together again for Monday's episode. Even on Christmas night, if my buddy Damichael's working, I'm going to work too. And we're going to get a great episode for you to break down Grizzlies Warriors and look ahead to the post-Christmas slate for Memphis. And we'll have a larger sample size of what that rotation will look like with Desmond Bane back in the fold. So lots of good things coming up over the next couple of episodes. For Damichael Cole, thank you, buddy. Stay safe out there. Enjoy your time. Find some time for yourself. Do something enjoyable while you're working. I know it's tough and you got deadlines and all that stuff, but try to find something to do for yourself. Damichael, I'll talk to Damichael soon, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm Joe Mullinax. Continue to stay locked in. Merry Christmas. This is Locked On.